We will call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. sharp. Let's start with agenda item number 1. We'll do the pledges, and I've got Carrie Glass doing the U.S. pledge. If you would please, this is what happens when you forget your ID. Okay, y'all please join her. And now Bill Evans for the Texas Pledge.
Ready? Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Play ball.
That's right. Thank y'all very much. I will ask for excused absences. I do know that Commissioner Bernstein will be running a little bit late. He will be here, but he is running late, so we will not have any absences. And so I'll go to agenda item number 3, opening remarks. For those attending the meeting, you can earn up to 4 hours of CE credit. I'd like to congratulate a broker back here who's been a broker for 37 years and has never attended a TREC meeting, either as a witness or a participant. So thank you for attending. Like I said, it is up to 4 hours. You must sign in and sign out. Broker Lawyer Committee has recommended some form changes today. We'll be addressing some of those are in relation to the NAR settlement. This is still a work in progress. Whether changes are adopted today, it is going to continue to change as the market change. We normally do a workshop the next day on Tuesday. Tuesday being election day, we're asking staff to work double time. The commissioners commit to an all day in Austin. We will do a workshop beginning at 1 o'clock or upon adjournment of the meeting, whichever is later. And my last comment will just be, TREC's been very busy this time of year. It really has. We've had everybody meet, everything going on, getting ready for the Capitol. It's just, it's been a busy time, and I just want to commend staff for doing a great job keeping everybody on task and moving forward. Okay, I'd like to go over some appointments, and I've lost page 1 of my annotated agenda. Appointments, license holder appointments for ESAC. We've got Bill Stedham. These are license holder appointments. Bill Stedham, Candy Luntzman, Christina Valero, and Christopher Gonzalez. License holder alternate will be Gene Mitchell. Educator appointments will be Carrie Bang and Paul Silverman. Educator alternate will be Jill Malloy. Y'all, ESAC, they're the ones that determine what's going to be in the core classes, SAE and CE classes. They do an incredible job. It's really great advisory committee because it brings not only the shareholders and the educators, but also everybody together to see what's best for the industry. So thank you for your commitment to serve on that. We also have a new public member to the inspector committee, and that is Cole Robinson. And he was appointed, I believe, last week or week before. And so, I'm sorry. I need a motion to ratify the appointments for ESAC.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. We also need a motion on the appointment of the public member to the inspector committee. I would entertain a motion to appoint Cole Robinson.
So moved.
Got a motion, Commissioner Woodruff. Second, Commissioner Chance. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. That's the way to start the meeting. All right. Now, we're going to jump down to agenda item number 22. And I'm going to have Jennifer Wheeler introduce the representative for Pearson View.
Jumped quicker than they Okay. I'm so sorry, everyone. We just went so quickly through that. But we do have a representative from Pearson View today, one of the business managers. Her name is Carrie Dahl. We have, per our contract, we have a presentation by Pearson View every year. We had them present to the board back in August, and they're here to present to you today. Just kind of some updates and yeah, so Carrie's here to share that with us. She's coming. Okay.
Your own.
Thank you for having me, especially so quickly. This is wonderful. Thanks for having me. I'm with Pearson View, and we've put together a few slides that we can go through and talk a little bit about the exams that we offer on behalf of TREC. So who is moving for, if you could move forward. So we're going to start with the sales and broker content overview. But I did want to ask, is everyone familiar with Pearson View as your testing vendor? Okay, if anybody has any questions, let me know. Sales and broker. So we're going to start here. This has been a big year for sales and broker content updates. First of all, we have a national portion of the exam. And that portion, every 4 to 5 years, we do something called a job task analysis, where we dive into what creates and what the topics are in real estate on a national level. And in order to do that, we work with all of the states, as many individuals as possible, to give us feedback on our questionnaire. And we're aided in that by TREC, by other state organizations that will send out information or kind of request help on our behalf. And it started in 2023. So in January, all of those dates up there, except for the Q1 2025, took place in 2023. That was our big JTA year. We dove deep. TREC gave us a lot of help with that. So thank you to everybody. And we are very proud to announce that those will go live in Q1 of 2025. And that's for all of our states that we do work with in Pearson View, TREC being one of them. So we're excited for that launch. And then on the state portion, we do something similar, not full JTA focused, but really dive deep with TREC and the subject matter experts, or SMEs, that TREC is able to provide to us. We have a content development team that is set specifically for the TREC programs. And this has been a big year. I think if you look at anyone that has been participating in that this year, it was some heavy lifting. We did some expansion. Let me see if I can get into some of the details. This was actually written for us and given the detail by our content developer, Nathaniel, who has a wonderful relationship with TREC and absolutely loves coming here. So the new exam forms are typically published every year, annually, unless there's something that comes into play, any legislative changes that come into play off cycle, and then we rush those through, not rush, but we work those through as well at the timely implementation. So this year we have drafted 3 new case narratives with 4 to 7 items on each narrative. That was a nice and heavy lift. And also 3 new contract and addendum case items, 4 to 6 items per new contract. So we're pretty proud of this year. There's been a lot of work. We would like to thank TREC for all of their assistance in that. And I believe Jennifer was directly involved and knows the work. So if we can move forward from here. And then we have the Texas Inspector's Content Overview. This one also has a national and a state. The national exam is actually written and owned by the NHIE subcontractor, not Pearson View, but we are the delivery mechanism for that. So everything stays within the same, for instance, if you're taking the national and the state, it's the same vendor that proctors those exams. So the state portion we do dig into. So we meet annually, again with the SMEs, and new exam forms again are published annually unless there's something that comes mid-cycle that we'll jump on as well. And if you could move. Okay, we have a new map because traditionally I've been able to build this map and really pinpoint things, but we've added 20 new third-party sites, and that broke my map. So we now have them listed instead of try to manually type them in. Texas is a big state, and you have you have the most test centers statewide of any state that I've seen. So it's a big one. So what I'd like to point out here is that we have Pearson owned and operated sites. We call them PPCs, and we have 29 of those within the state of Texas. Those PPCs are owned and operated by Pearson. They have our high quality standards. Everything looks the same, feels the same. The wall colors are the same. The process is the same, whether you're sitting in Austin or Portland, Oregon. So the consistency there is pretty significant. The third-party sites, we are now up to 191. And those third-party sites are often colleges and universities, testing centers, learning centers. And that, especially after COVID, really, we blew that channel up and made it the size that it is now. And that allowed a greater number of individuals within the state of Texas the ability to sit for an exam in person at a much more convenient time and place to where they are. So with this map, because it is so full, we've written everything out as far as the third-party sites on the side. They're in alphabetical order, and please let me know if you have any questions on those. The third thing I'd like to mention are our government and military sites. So we have 5 military sites within the state of Texas, and we also have a government site. I believe the Houston location is within a library. Any questions on test centers or the map in general? Okay, if you can jump forward. So now we're going to take a look at testing volume by location, and we have 2 of these slides. The first one is sales and broker. If you'll take a look at the top 10 that we have listed out of the over 200, they are third-party sites. So that is what is working because the quantity of those sites is in those regions where people are taking their exams. So expanding that test center footprint has worked out beautifully. So those are your top 10 within the state of Texas for the sales and broker exams. And then the next slide shows the real estate and professional inspectors. And a Pearson Professional Center made it into the top 10 on this one. I believe it is number 2 or number 3. I can't read from this distance, but one of our test sites made it in. Again, otherwise they're third-party sites. So your coverage within the state is good, it's working. We're pretty proud of that build out. And if you'd like to move forward. One source of information, and I feel the best source of information for any of these exams, are something that we call the candidate handbooks. And these candidate handbooks are available on our website at the TREC specific site 24 hours a day. They're available to you on a PDF format, downloadable to anybody, anywhere. They're free to print them once they're downloaded. This is somewhat like the exam Bible. Everything that you need to know about the exam is in this. There's content outlines, there's exam fees, there's the process to register for an exam, information about TREC, I'm trying to think, exam procedures, what to bring to the test center, which we've actually put a few slides together to talk about that as well. Study materials. There's a lot of accommodations information within this. So anything exam related, if you are a candidate looking to sit for that exam, this is the first place you should look. And this is the first thing that you're gonna see when you jump onto our TREC website. You scroll down, you can download these directly. We also keep these up to date. So anytime something changes, you will be able to see the date on that, and that will change anytime there's a change within the program, any changes within process or rules for testing, they'll all go in here. So the Texas Real Estate Candidate Handbook and the Inspector Handbook are separate, and I would welcome you to check those out at any time. And if you can jump forward. A little bit about exam scheduling and delivery. So the details are in those handbooks, but we follow the business rules as set up by our partners. So the TREC business rules may be different than, for instance, Nebraska real estate, but those are dictated to us by TREC, and that's what we run by. There's 2 options for scheduling. So the web scheduling is available 24/7. Anyone can go on and schedule their exam. The other option is to use our call center. That is open 7 days a week, limited hours. However, they have the exact same information and they're working off of the same screen that an individual is. So there's no benefit other than a little bit of help through the process for someone to call in. They're seeing the same testing opportunities as the individual on the web. We have all of the confirmation, rescheduling, cancellations, anything that has to do with the exam is set forward to you by the email in your account. We have 2 forms of ID, and we'll touch on this again shortly. 2 forms of ID that are required for Texas testing. The first one is your primary, and that's a government-issued ID, photo-bearing, signature, et cetera, like a driver's license or passport. The second one is a signature-required card. So that would be like a credit card or something that has that signature match, but we do require 2 forms of ID. Candidates will leave the test center with with your results in hand. So there is no waiting, did I pass, did I not? All of that uncertainty is taken away. Once you are done with your exam and you go to that desk to check out, they're gonna hand you a sheet, a score report, that's gonna let you know if you passed or if you didn't. And I have examples of those score reports that I'll show you in just a second. But that is everybody wants to know right away. It's a tough thing to walk away from an exam not knowing where you're at. So candidates can also access their score report at any time through their web portal. So their account has the option to go in and they can see that immediately at home as well. I'll have you jump. So exam day. We've put in a few slides to talk about what this looks like. This photo is an example of a Pearson Professional Center test layout. So they do look like this, and they're very consistent nationwide. There is a cube in the center or a full window available to the proctor that they can see in everything. There are also cameras from the top, sides, etc. It's very secure, but that's a great photo example of what that looks like. And if we jump forward, we can talk about the test center admissions. So when an individual comes into a test center, those 2 those ID forms are required. One thing that, and anybody that has actually visited one of our test centers has gone through this process with me, we need the identification to match exactly with what you've signed up for. So if your name is John and you go by Skip, we're gonna need John, even if everyone knows you as Skip. We need those to match. So that's something that we're pretty particular on. However, if your name is John and you go by Johnny, that one might fly, but Skip probably won't. We must have the photo and digital signature captured. So we take your photo on site for the day that you are testing, and we capture your signature. We also have lockers. Every PPC has a locker that your bag, watch, any additional pieces of take-off things, technology, goes into that locker. And 30 minutes prior, that's always a good thing. You always want to get there early because sometimes you'll have a few people that are checking in at the same time. If you check in 15 minutes after your scheduled appointment, we may be able to cancel that because that shortens your exam time, and you just want to make sure you have the time. I'll have you jump. We also have every candidate agree to the testing rules. So once they arrive, they are handed the testing rules. They sit down and read through them, and part of their acceptance of taking the exam is accepting those rules. Then we perform a self-check. I'd like to stress that we are not touching any of the candidates. This is a self-check done by the candidate in front of the proctor. So they're turning out their hoods, they're opening their sleeves, they're turning out their pockets, they're making sure that we're not hiding anything. So that is a self-pat down. And then if you have glasses on, there is we have you put your glasses, because now there's technologies that exist in glasses. So we have them put into a little tray that we can circle around, make sure there's no device or recording on those. And then you can have the back so you can see your exam. We also have, if you ever have any questions on this process, we have a video. And that link is a live link in this presentation that walks you through that whole process. If you can switch. So these are the score reports that I was mentioning. So when an individual finishes their exam and they're checking out, they're handed their score report. The one you want to see is on the left. That's the passing score report, and that gives you instructions on what to do next. The one you don't want to get is on your right, and that's your failing score report. There's a lot more information in there. Details on, for instance, how many opportunities you have through TREC to take that exam as you're authorized, which is 3 times. And after the 3rd time, you're asked to go back and complete some courses. And that's detailed out, so right away, that individual knows exactly what is expected of them and what the next steps are. The other point that I want to point out, it's tough to see, but on the bottom, you can also see where you struggled. So the content areas of the exam, if you 10 questions, 10 right, you probably have a good grasp. 10 questions, 3 right, you're going to want to go back to that area. So it gives you a good idea of where your strengths and weaknesses are when you walk out. The other thing I wanted to point out, and this is on all of our score reports, at the very bottom, the little type on the bottom, is a verification link. So you can, for instance, you can hand the score report to an employer or someone who has some skin in the game for you to receive this, and they can go to that website and type in a very specific code that will show them and verify that you've passed that exam or failed, if that's the case. And if you'll switch to the next one, we have the inspector's score reports. They look a little bit different because the rules are a little bit different, but again, that's all detailed out. You want the one on the left, not the one on the right, but the one on the right. When I was looking through this the other night, I believe they got 0 correct. So that might be a go back to start. But you can tell again exactly based on the areas where you want to focus. So if you can jump forward. This is what that score report authentication page looks like. So on the bottom of those score reports, there's the link and the codes that you put in. This is that page. So if you are looking to authenticate someone's report, this is the screen this is exactly what you would see, a direct screenshot. So I'll have you jump forward. And this is a little bit more information. So these are live links, again, in the presentation that will take you to the Sales and Broker site where all of this is listed, including the handbooks, the inspector site where all of this is listed, including the handbooks, and then we have a surprise. So if you want to jump forward, we have a coming soon this year. So this is new, and on November 13th, based on the customer service records for our highest volume states, which is Texas, Florida, et cetera, we built a new program, a new Q&A per se. So this is something where an individual will go in and type a question and the answer is there. Somewhat akin to a Q&A, but more of an AI driven. Currently, we have about 7 topics based on the customer service records and the questions that are coming in. And we're starting with those 7 content areas, 7 questions. And we're really excited for this to come out. This will be for sales and broker only. We're not doing inspectors yet, but on November 13th, I believe, 13th, this will be launching, and we're really excited. So next year I'll have a whole new slide for you. Any questions? Anything that I can jump back to?
Any questions? I've got a couple. Yeah. The coming soon, is that available to the people that are registered to take the test, or is it available for anybody that wants to go to the website?
I believe it's anybody that wants to go to the website, because the majority of the questions that come in are pre-registration. They're, how do I register? What does this mean? Am I in the right place? How do I set up my account? Pieces of those questions are the most common that we'll get. So that's really what we're building it on. I don't know the details quite yet because I haven't been able to dig in and play with it. But this has been a project that Andrea Radwanski, who is the representative for Pearson for TREC, she's your program manager, she has specifically in person been working on this. So she would have a whole list of answers for you, but she's got the inside scoop. So I will know very soon.
Second question, and you covered this, and I might have missed the exact answer. We have rule changes happening January 1st.
Yep.
And you're in pre-license, and the course book's not updated, the review's not updated. If you take the test on December 30th, it will be on the old rule, not the new rule. That will change January 1st. So January 1 is January 1.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we work with very closely, our content development team works very closely with TREC. And anytime anything changes, we make sure the launches happen according to those changes. We don't want someone to be taking a test in August on rules that expired in June. We want to make sure that everything is up to date and current with what is on the books now.
So any contract changes that are adopted today, the questions will not change until they are drop dead date of January 1st, whatever it is.
That is, yes, because
Very good.
they work very close with TREC, and we have teams that follow that. We have the specific content developer that works with you, Nathaniel. He's got a year's worth of planning out ahead of him, and he knows exactly when things are dropping. And if something were to come up, say, for instance, something unexpected happens on May 1st, we're going to be on that, and we're going to know that, and that's going to be, it won't be a full deep dive dig through release, but we're going to make sure that everything is covered correctly for that date.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Do you have one slide left, or?
I think it's a thank you slide.
Oh, very good.
Questions
All right.
slide. There we go.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has any questions, please let me know anytime.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
very good. Commissioner Woodruff, that's a long way from the Scantron, isn't it?
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, number 2 pencil.
The number 2 pencil in the bubble.
Yeah.
And stay in the,
I think the best way to follow that up is a report from the Education Standards Advisory Committee that probably deals with getting people ready for this, and Bill Stedham, the chairman. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. ESAC met on October 7th, both in person and via Teams, and we discussed rule changes regarding the final exam proctoring and student identification requirements. The committee discussed the security risks with requiring students to display their photo ID on camera. In other words, holding it up on camera during a live online broadcast course. And after discussion, ESAC recommends amending TREC Rule 535.65 to say that providers must verify the student identification at class signup and before conducting a class as an alternative to displaying a photo ID. ESAC makes this recommendation to reduce the security concerns and allow providers to utilize other reasonable means to identify the student's identity. We also discussed removing exam proctoring requirements from the TREC rules out of concern that the requirements are burdensome and unnecessary, particularly in content of course examinations, because the license exam itself will remain proctored, as you just heard from Person View. These changes were both recommended by ESAC and the Inspector Committee and will be before you today for your approval. The next ESAC meeting will take place on January 6th at 10 a.m. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you. And y'all, you can look at the full meeting on the website. Go to our website and there's a link there. Okay, next up, Chair Ty Williams with the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee. And I think we're going to see you twice today.
I think so.
Good morning.
Looking forward to it. Just made my day a little better, honestly. Well, thank you, commissioners, for allowing us to represent brokers across the state and talk through some very important issues that have come to light. We're coming up on our first year as an official committee. So I just wanted to congratulate you for selecting some of the best people in the business to be on this committee. And I can tell you we've made some serious headway through the past year, and I'm very proud of the folks on the committee. So thank you very much. On October 15th, we met, as you may recall, last broker responsibility meeting. We had an individual provide a unique idea on exchanging excess experience points for some educational credit. As a group, we received and discussed the idea of exchanging experience points with continuing education, and we found that it warrants some more merit to talk about. We discussed the blanket credit of having a bachelor's degree and using that credit to get your 630 hours for your broker's license. We also discussed increasing experience points overall. We discussed supervisors as well as experience points from supervising agents and transactions. We are continuing to investigate possible recommendation for a change for delegated supervisors and how they receive credit towards their broker's license. Currently, it is based on the amount of time they acted as a supervisor. The committee is discussing what it may look like to use transactions supervised versus time for that credit towards a broker's license. We found that to be very interesting discussion, and I think it's going to become very fruitful. The committee is investigating whether or not that may be more of an accurate measure for experience versus the current time calculation. The group came to an agreement to further review and discuss increasing experience points as well as giving the option to use experience points over and above the minimum to possibly credit towards continuing education. We find that experience really seems to come up in a lot of the public comment that we've seen over the past couple of meetings. And as our discussion continues, we feel like this may be a good answer to some of the things where people are having a hard time getting that continuing education to fulfill their needs to get their broker's license. We are still discussing this, but we're not prepared to make a recommendation yet. A few meetings back, we did have 42 pages as a reminder of comments. Each page contained multiple emails and comments from the public and from different agents across the state, giving their opinion and advice on what we should do and how we should look at the broker's license. Overwhelmingly, comments were not to lower the bar, but we needed to raise the bar. Experience is the most important, with continuing education being a strong number 2. When we review and discuss any changes, we refer back and look at these comments just to make sure we're level set on what we need to be doing. The Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee made a request for staff to create a draft supplement for the broker application that would address and allow for experience points to be used towards continuing education. So if we did move forward on this, we would have a better plan in place to show and present to you, commissioners. We also are working to identify a date for a limited BRAC meeting, like a Zoom meeting, to review the supplement and give us time to make any recommendation changes before our next official meeting in January. We're looking to do this in mid-December or early December. There was a poll that was sent out a few days ago, and hopefully everyone's gotten back and answered that poll. Let's see here. We're hoping that in January we're able to make some type of recommendation to you, commissioners, on what we found and what we feel like would be the next move. Our last meeting, we also sent a request to the Broker Lawyer Committee to look into a possible disclosure form for license holders practicing wholesaling. We sent over an example, and we are looking forward to hearing back from the Broker Lawyer Committee as well. I understand they've added it to future agenda, and we wanted to say thank you. Our next meeting is to be determined in December. It will be a limited Zoom meeting, and our next official meeting will be on January 15th, 2025. Any questions?
Commissioner Brown. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning.
Excuse me. as your liaison, I try not to interject into the meeting because I don't want to influence the course of discussion. And certainly with a room full of new people from when you and I started this conversation, I think actually when Commissioner Lerner was chair of the working group, you're going to get all kinds of new ideas with a room full of new people. That said, I think that the course of the discussion right now is going off of where we started this, which was, can we level the playing field from an education standpoint of the people who don't have college degrees, right? Because it's overly burdensome to try to get 930 hours of CE when you don't have a college degree, where the college degree might not be appropriate to real estate. And all of a sudden, all those hours are waived. But in doing so, we wanted to double, essentially, the experience points because, as you said, the feedback has been overwhelmingly in favor of, we don't want brokers who are good at sitting in a classroom. We want brokers who are good at selling real estate, right? And I feel like we're getting real convoluted with that. And we might need to just simplify things. That would be my only comment.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you, Chance.
Any other comments? Right. I've got one question. When you're looking at experience to offset some education, is that going to be in the last 5 years? Because I'm thinking, you have somebody get their license in 1995, they don't have a degree, it's going to take them almost 17, 18 years of CE to get the education. But let's say they're working for a small property management company, let's say managing 200 properties, and they've been doing that for 15 years. And you're only going to count 5 years of the experience. I'm not sure how the transactions are going to count, but they've been doing it 15 or 20 years, count only 5. Just look at that if they have some experience beyond that 5, because there's some they're probably going to be a better broker than someone with a degree in criminal justice like myself with 4 years experience in a few transactions. So
That makes
I don't know if we want to limit the experience to that 4 out of 5, but y'all just discuss that. That makes
sense.
One of my concern. All right, anything else? All right, thank you for your work. I'm looking forward to maybe something coming to the commission in February.
Yes, sir.
I wish it was on Valentine's Day. It could be a gift, but thank you.
That's right.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thanks. Agenda item number 8. Takes Real Estate Inspector Committee Chair Lee Warren. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. It's always interesting to listen to other committees and go, oh, I just want to, I'll just do that.
We may need to move you to the front then.
The Inspector Advisory Committee met on October 14th here at TREC. ESAC committee made some proposals that they mentioned at their last meeting, and one of them affected the inspector side of things as well. ESAC committee has recommended the removal of the proctor requirement for qualifying courses. After discussion, the IEC has forwarded the proposal to apply to inspector courses as well, and this should be before you today. The Education Subcommittee is also still looking at having an education requirement for obtaining an apprentice license. Currently, there is no education qualifying courses required, and since there is no course that would currently fulfill that requirement, it'll take some time to get those details worked out. It'll also take a legislative change in order to make that happen, so we're looking at options to put that into place. SOP subcommittee is working on the most current review of the standards of practice. They are taking the standards section by section, so this is a lengthy process. All stakeholders are being encouraged to get involved in the process early and often to ensure that their voice is heard. All inspector committee and subcommittee meetings are open, and the agendas are posted on TREC's website, so people have plenty of opportunity to give their input. There have also been a lot of disciplinary actions recently taken against inspectors for improperly modifying the current 7-6 form. Much of the 7.6 must be reproduced in a very specific format. There are some modifications that can be made to the form, but those are limited. Those can be found in the section 535.223 of the TREC rules on the TREC website. Inspectors are required to follow the guidelines set forth within this section to ensure each inspection report that is produced is properly for each inspection. We're trying to get more information out to remind license holders of this requirement to try and educate people a little bit better on that, because feel obviously if we're getting disciplinary actions in that particular area, that may be an issue. Our next meeting, the Inspector Committee, will be on January 27th here at TREC, where we will select new officers for the next upcoming year. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for the Inspector Committee? All right, thank you very much. Next up, General Counsel Vanessa Burgess will give a report on the Texas Real Estate Broker Lawyer Committee. While she's coming up, we do have public comments. The public comment cards are in the back. If you'd like to make a public comment, please fill one out. If it's a specific agenda item, we'll take it up then. If it's just in general, we'll take it up during agenda item, just before agenda item 12. Okay, good morning.
Good morning. Vanessa Burgess, General Counsel for the record. The Broker Lawyer Committee met on October 11th and reviewed hundreds of public comments related to form changes proposed at the August TREC meeting. Most of the Broker Lawyer Committee's recommended changes are the culmination of 2 years' worth of work on the part of the committee, with other changes being recommended in response to industry practice changes around broker compensation affecting many license holders. After reviewing all of the comments, which again, they always do, and discussing each proposal, the BLC only made a few small tweaks, which includes removing from the proposal the paragraph 8B change to add a statement that brokers' fees are not set by law and are negotiable, and instead keeping the previously struck references to addenda in paragraphs 6E, 4, 7, and 9. As mentioned, these changes are before the Commission today for vote for adoption. Abby will be presenting those later on. If adopted, the earliest the form changes would be effective is January 2025. So those are the contract form changes that are up for adoption today. There is also another recommended change to the notice of buyer's termination of contract for proposal. So that's going up for proposal today, in light of the recommended changes to the third-party financing addendum. So this will be before the Commission later in the meeting for proposal, and Abby will be covering the details of that proposal.
All right. Any questions? All right, thank you very much. We will move on to agenda item number 10. That's a report by the Executive Committee. These are available in your materials on page 9 and page 10. The executive met on September 18th. We talked about the August meeting and got a lot of positive feedback on the broker secession rule. Also talked about the upcoming Arello meetings. Talked about we had 14,000 calls, 3,000 emails. All emails were returned within 24 hours. Our hold time for the 14,000 calls is 54 seconds, and that's outstanding. Again, incredible staff. Also talked about possible fee changes with renewals kind of going down and new licensees still going up currently. We have some discussion on how that is going to, play out over the next 12 to 18 months. We also met on October 17th. Again, just under 14,000 calls, hold time a minute, 3 seconds, nearly 2,700 emails received. Those were all answered within 24 hours. And I need to tell the people visiting, an automatic reply, we got your email, thank you for sending it. That does not count as a reply. These questions are actually answered and sent back to the licensees. Also talked about some rule changes for family sick leave and staff count and everything. So those, like I say, those are on in your material on page 9 and 10. And that concludes my report. We'll be glad to answer any questions. Before we go to staff reports, we have Texas A&M here to Pamela Cannon, Executive Director for the Real Estate Research Center at Texas A&M. We're going to go ahead and let her present item agenda number 21. And welcome.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor and a privilege.
We appreciate all you do to help the industry, really do.
I would have to characterize fiscal year '24 as a year of transition for the center. We had so many new changes and excitement and some not so excitement things that happened, but somehow it all meshed together to be just a good, solid year for us. As you know, the executive director of 18 years stepped aside. What a transition that was. I've been in now my role for about a year, just right at a year. I finally can say I think I can call it mine now. Many other things contributed to our year. We were moved from the Division of Academic and Strategic Collaborations to the Division of Research. And though that may not sound like such a big thing, but when you have to start over with new relationships and new processes and new people, it becomes enormously time-consuming and challenging to make sure that we are in unison and alignment and still able to go ahead with our own job and mission. We had a lot of staff changes. We turned over a little over a fourth of our staff, and that's saying a lot because they're not a big group. We're only at about 20, and we had 6 turnovers. People retired. We were able to hire a couple of others. We launched a new website, which was a huge undertaking. Our desire is to be a lot more friendly to our users, especially on the data side, so we worked hard on that. I would have to say recruitment remains to be our biggest challenge. Finding the right minds to come in who are passionate about the real estate industry, specifically in Texas, but with an eye on what's going on around us and at the national stage. We are currently recruiting 2 research positions, which means we also recruit our editorial and communications staff, which also means we have to expand our data capabilities. So we're in an expansion mode. But in spite of all of that, I'm happy to report that our research went on. We continue to do the things that we are being asked to do. We're keeping an eye on industry. We're watching with you to see what happens, how things swing. And we're trying to stay in touch and maybe better in touch with our constituents. We're getting out. We want to listen and hear what's concerning you. What's keeping you up? Where do you see the trends moving? Where are your pain points? And we want to be able to address those in meaningful ways. We're growing our focus on the commercial real estate side of the industry as well as residential. We're looking for we're listening for the questions that you keep asking so that we can find information and give you better information, better resources for making decisions. We are evaluating how to create the best work environment for our own team. How do we facilitate growth? How do we facilitate discussion, thought leadership? How are we physically in our own space contributing and being the best we can be? I think in general, the horizon at the center looks really great. We are all committed to doing the most meaningful work possible. Of course, we can't do it all, and so we've started to partner with some people around the state. We actually have one partnership in place with a professor over in the Texas A&M Corpus Christi satellite campus, and he's doing work in the residential space in that Corpus area, looking at the contrast between industry and residential growth. And we want to do more of those. We don't have any currently ready to start, but we're in process and we're talking to people to get those off the ground. We're going to look for pockets around the state where we see activity. Where's that growth? Where is the industry moving and changing? And we're going to target those to go in and do a little bit closer look. We also need to focus on the insurance aspects of the industry as well as office industrial. Insurance has just played a bigger and bigger role. More and more people are asking us that question. And so we're watching it and we're planning some research into that area as well. It's not only the legal political environment that is going to shape the future of housing in Texas, but it's also that economic environment. You can't talk about housing without talking about jobs. Affordable housing is not in a vacuum. And so we're looking at those tangential and direct focus areas that we need to concentrate on. Of course, we're looking at price appreciation, office utility, those things that are fluctuating. It's just a very volatile time, as we all know, right? So we're looking at different scenarios. What happens if things lean this way? What happens if they go that way? And we're fine-tuning our forecasting in that way, addressing it more as what might happen under these different environmental factors as opposed to what we really think might happen. It's too volatile to call. There's too many variables in place. And so no one should be doing that at the moment. We can only talk about possible or potential outcomes. So I see the next 1 to 3 years as a growth period. It's my not just desire, it's my drive right now to listen carefully to all of you, to hear what you're saying, listen to your questions, and then evaluate how we can respond accordingly, meet the needs of the industry in the best way possible. So thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Chairman Kestner.
Any questions? I've got one quick one. You mentioned the relationship with a college or university in Corpus to help get local data. And I guess you're looking for colleges, universities across the state to develop a relationship with y'all on that?
We are. We first want to drive the research by targeting areas where we see things happening, and then we're going to go into that area, identify the best researcher we can find who's on the ground. One of the things I loved talking with one of the professors from Amarillo a few months ago, whom I hope will be able to do some work with us in the future, but feet on the ground. She's talking to people in her grocery store and at her church and her community service, and she knows everything about what's going on in that area. And so that's the kind of person I want to target, somebody who has the research ability but is embedded in their community.
Well, thank you. And I love you mentioned insurance, because we're always worried about interest rates and taxes. And now insurance used to be something that we didn't even worry about till, right before closing. Now it is a huge factor in qualifying.
We keep hearing that.
Yeah, it definitely impacts affordability. So we appreciate that. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Okay, we will go to staff reports, and we will start with Executive Director Chelsea Buckholtz. Good morning.
Good morning. I wanted y'all to know that I think many of you receive the magazine produced by Texas A&M, but if you do not, there are a few copies over here on the corner that Pamela brought. So she brought enough for anyone who wants one. Okay, I'm just going to jump right in it. In our reports today, you will hear not only about the last quarter, but also how we closed out the fiscal year. Fiscal year ends at the end of August, so you will get that end-of-year data. This end-of-year data provides a great insight into our work. You'll hear about the leveling out of our license holder numbers, the successes in enforcement to process cases faster and more effectively. You'll hear about the speed with which we're answering the phone and returning emails. This is just to name a few. I'm very proud of the work of each of our divisions. We have a wonderful team leading this agency, and I love working alongside them. Also before you today, as mentioned by a few, are the form changes recommended by the Broker Lawyer Committee, which of course include changes related to the NAR settlement. This has been a topic of interest across, of course, the whole industry, and represents a lot of hard work on behalf of the Broker Lawyer Committee and also staff. And so I just want to recognize that effort. And as the chair said, of course, this is ongoing. We are not finished yet. And later today in the workshop, we will provide you with some information on our plans for the legislative session. We are knee-deep into coordinating with stakeholders, and becoming organized on that front. The Texas legislature, as you know, meets every other spring. And so they will reconvene in January of 2025, and we will be ready. With the departure of Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle, Summer Mandel will take the lead on all of our legislative issues, and I have great confidence in her in that regard. A few agency updates I would like to mention, and the first is a brag on our staff. Each October, we participate in the State Employee Charitable Campaign, SECC, alongside all other state agencies. And 2024 marks the 30th year of this campaign and generous giving by all state agencies, higher education, and even retired employees. And since 1994, this effort has raised over $209 million for Texans across the state due to the generosity of employees. And internally, each year, I have set a participation goal of 95% within our agency, along with a monetary goal that changes each year. For this year, it was $28,000. And I have always said that if we reach that goal, either one of those goals, then I would award staff by closing the agency for New Year's Eve. And we have never come close until this year. I think a huge piece of having a strong, positive culture is an agency that has the ability to look beyond ourselves and to encourage the spirit of giving and to have a spirit of giving among a collective group in the agency. And I'm proud to say that we ended this campaign with a grand total of raising $21,197 with exactly a 95% participation rate. The last few hours of the campaign on Friday were really a sight to behold, with a serious amount of peer pressure involved, and I am unapologetic of that. So congratulations to our staff for reaching this milestone, and thank you especially for Director Robert Hood, who led us in this successful effort. Moving on to the more mundane, building updates. We continue to work on plans to move our lease space from this space to 15th and Congress in a couple years, about 3 years. We have a team of people within the agency that are helping finalize floor plans and schematics with the Texas Facilities Commission and their vendors who are designing the space. This gives me great hope as we get news of glitches in our current building, which is the building we're in today is undergoing some significant electrical work in the coming weeks. And the Texas Facilities Commission has planned outages, meaning no electricity in the building over weekends and holidays when most agencies are closed anyway. These outages will cause our website and online licensing services portal that people use to manage their license to become unavailable because our website is hosted on property. Not for long, I will say. So we will publicize these outages. We will encourage people to handle their online business around these outages and encourage them to contact us early, not to wait for the last minute, just in case their last minute is part of those outages. But I wanted you to be aware of that. I don't always talk about such things in this report, but there are a couple of outages between now and the end of the year, and I think it will be inconvenient. And so I want you to be aware in case people approach you. Please let them know that this was not a decision point of ours, but it is simply part of being, working in this space. The first outage starts next Friday, November 8th. It will start in the evening. It will conclude on Monday, November 11th. November 11th is a state holiday, and so we will be closed that day. It is often not a state holiday for our license holders, so that may provide a glitch for them. The next two outages are first Wednesday, November 27th, around Thanksgiving, beginning in the evening and ending Sunday, December 1st. And then another Friday, December 20th, starting in the evening through Monday, December 23rd. Monday, December 23rd is a working day, so we're going to have to make plans for that. We will keep communicating about these outages. They may even change. This is a little bit fluid, but I just wanted to warn you of that. The ramp project. I think I have a few more meetings of updating you about the ramp project. I wish I could say I had a date where we would be finished, but we are moving closer. We continue to make progress, though slower than I would like. This is a behemoth of a project, and we have a really solid team working on it. My confidence in the quality of the project is high. We remain in various stages of implementation. Because we're doing a lot of Legos in my house, my most recent analogy is based on Legos. So she received a big box, my daughter did recently, that ultimately means building a roller coaster. And it took many days of putting together various pieces of this project before finally putting all the parts together. So one of the first steps of the ramp project is configuration. And we continue various configurations of the various pieces throughout this whole project. We started there and we continue there. Then we automate what we configure, and then we test it. And all along the way, we're working on converting the data that will ultimately go into that database, right? And later on, we integrate all the pieces into the final product. Likely there's more to it than what I've just said, but I'm trying to simplify it for my simple mind. So with Legos, you work on a small piece. The cart, the people who will ride in the cart, the towers, the loops and turns, and you make sure each part works. And once all of the small pieces are finished, then you put them together and make sure they fit together just right, testing all along the way. The Legos analogy aside, this project has a lot of moving parts, and we're still working on the various pieces as we put them together. I expect a late summer 2025 completion. I'm not setting a date because I think my heart might be a little bit disappointed, but I expect that it may coincide with the beginning of the next fiscal year. With that, I will end. There's more going on. You will hear more about it from all who follow after me, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Commissioner Pena.
Chelsea, with respect to the ramp project, have you heard how the progress is coming along? I mean, are we coming along as expected, or?
Yes, so data conversion is a huge piece right now, but we've made great strides in that. We have, I'm not going to get the words right, but I'm going to say that we have done enough of the conversion to allow for testing by our division director. So that was a huge project to get the data converted in such a way that allowed the division directors to look at it and make sure it worked for them. That is happening now. That's a big piece of then determining when we can go live, essentially. And then, yes, we have, I mentioned that we are doing a lot of configuring. Many groups of the project have completed their configuring and are working to automate it and then are testing it. So we really are in every phase of the project, but many are deep into the project and well beyond the first phases. So I see progress. I don't see stalling, but I see that progress just being slower than what I'd like it to be.
And at this point, we're not seeing any or expecting any significant change orders to what has been projected as far as the total cost?
No, there's a few things that may come that are small. I'll give you one example. I have recently moved the education function of the board from Jennifer Wheeler's shop to the board, under the board. We did that for licensing a couple of years ago. So now the board handles within their staff, education, licensing, and enforcement, all within their umbrella. So Jennifer Wheeler has led the team on education for the board for the RAMP project. That has now passed to the TALCB staff team. And they may have a few small changes related to that change in how they function. I don't see that being a significant cost driver, but I made that move in function now so that we could account for that change in RAMP, knowing that there might be a small cost to that, but it won't be major. So there might be some tweaks along the way to things like that, but I don't see any more change orders that delayed us like the only change order we've had, which was a significant delay, and it did have a cost.
Commissioner Hartgraves.
Yeah, on the building issue, it seems like you had mentioned there was still some discussion on where the meeting space would be, whether it be in that facility or in one nearby, or has there been any more talk about that?
We have, so I've been staring at floor plans. We will have a dedicated meeting space on the first floor of the 15th and Congress building that we own. We don't really own that space, but it will be part of what we rent. It will be a little bit smaller than this room, but it will accommodate a table of 9 across the front with an audience behind it. And we are working to make sure that we have the technology in place to record those meetings and put them on the web and do all of the things we do now, but in a more tech-savvy way, I'll say.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lerner.
I have a couple questions. I know that now that Tony's gone, you kind of divided up his duties. What are the 2 different job descriptions? Because it sounds like Summers is changing and then you're hiring someone else. Can you tell us what those 2 are going to do?
Yes, so I have added to Summer's job duties. She has always helped with legislative issues. So she and Tony worked very closely on legislative issues, and so I have asked her to run lead on legislative issues, and then our attorneys are providing support for her on that. So that's the legislative function. For the Deputy Executive Director function, I have posted that position. I will interview for it later this week. And that will be a more traditional kind of second in command umbrella position that oversees has more interaction with all of you, and that oversees agency-wide projects and helps me.
And what does the legislative position actually do?
They act as our liaison between the legislature and our office, and then they lead the charge on any issue related to, as bills come in, they follow those bills and make sure that we can provide testimony on those bills as necessary. They act as a point of contact for members' offices. They analyze legislation that would affect us along with a team of folks. They lead the charge on supporting all functions related to the legislative session. Does that help you? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Also, on the hosting, if we're getting new hosting in the future, there's no way to transfer over, because those are huge times that people are on the internet.
Are you talking about hosting the website?
Yes.
Yeah, so we are moving more and more to the cloud, and we should have some functionality of our website in the cloud. The challenge is that much of our Versa system is local, and we're moving away from Versa towards Acela. That's the RAMP project. Acela will be in the cloud, and so we should have cloud functionality for a website and for our database once that database is live. So let's say in about a year or less. But for now, much of it is local and affected by these electrical outages.
And the Versa can't be put in the cloud or different hosting for the time being?
No.
Okay. Okay, and I know we've mentioned this for a couple of years that we've been talking about RAMP. Are we going to be able to see proof of concept of the outward-facing website prior to it being finished?
RAMP is not outward facing, it's our behind the scenes. Right. And so no on that. But then as we make website changes, as we launch a new website, we will engage commissioners along the way.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? All right, before you step away, over the next few minutes, you're going to have reports from all the director heads and everything, and theoretically, this could be my last opportunity to say this, but thank you for putting TREC where it's at today and versus where it was 5.5 years ago. You've got great staff, and all the staff, like you're the leader of your staff, and the staff's the leader of their department, and it all comes back to you. So thank you for the time and effort and passion you put into this agency. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I hope it's not your last. I hope we do this again. Well. But your job is as good as your boss, and we are able to do what we could do because of your support led by you, Chair Kessner, and I am I'm so grateful for y'all giving me a chance this is the best job I've ever had.
Thanks. All right. Now, we're going to find out who makes Chelsea look good. All right. Let's start with Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division. 54-second hold time. Wow.
Yeah, wow.
That's incredible.
All right, well, good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I am Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division. The Customer Relations Division serves as the agency's centralized customer service hub, responding to inquiries from Texas consumers, license holders, and applicants through various channels, including phone, email, and in-person visits. When we are fully staffed, we have 31 dedicated employees. Today, I am pleased to present on the status of our division. I'll report on two parts. First, a comparison of our performance over the past fiscal years, and second, the data from September 2024, which is our first month of the new fiscal year. On page 14 in your meeting materials, you'll find the average monthly calls and hold times from FY 2020 to FY 2024. Our average monthly call volume peaked at 19,000 calls in 2021, decreasing to an average of about 15,000 calls in 2024. Remarkably, our hold times improved from 1 minute and 57 seconds in 2021 to 54 seconds in 2024, consistently remaining below our goal of 2 minutes for the past 5 fiscal years. Fiscal years 19 and fiscal year 20 are no longer appear in this data, but we have come a long way from our average monthly hold times of 14 minutes. This indicates a significant increase in our call handling efficiency. Moving to page 15, you can see the average calls per month for the last 5 fiscal years. January consistently shows the highest call volume, followed by March and August. Over the last 2 years, our monthly calls have stabilized around 16,000 calls per month on average. On page 16, we present the monthly hold time data from September 2020 to August 2024. After fluctuating in earlier years, we observed a clear downward trend in average hold times, particularly in 2024, which averaged under 1 minute. Page 17, this shows the number of emails processed from September 2020 to August 2024. Although we saw a decrease in processed emails in fiscal year 2023 and 2024, we have successfully responded to all emails within 24 hours. This concludes my fiscal year comparison. I'm happy to take any questions before moving on to our September report.
Any questions? Okay.
All right. On page 19, we will start our September 2024 report. All metrics for this month trended positively, with our call volume at approximately 13,600 calls and an average hold time of 1 minute and 3 seconds. 19 staff members managed calls and emails. We managed a hold time under 2 minutes for 18 out of the 20 business days, even amidst busy periods like September 4th and September 30th. So at the beginning of the month and the end of the month, we had some busy call volumes. On page 20, this provides a 13-month overview of call volumes and hold times, consistently below our 2-minute target. The range of calls varied from 12,000 calls in December 2023 to 18,000 calls in January of 2024. Then on page 21, you'll see that in September, we processed 2,695 emails, all within 1 business day of receipt. Page 22, this shows our fiscal year comparison with data for just September 2024. 13,000 calls and an average hold time of 1 minute. In conclusion, I appreciate your attention to the progress of the Customer Relations Division. I welcome your questions regarding our strategies and performance.
Any questions? I do. Commissioner Pena. I'm sorry, Commissioner Brown.
Morning, Robert. when y'all get these emails in, because I know this is something we've talked about a lot, is I'm a agent. I sign up with my first broker. I open my account using the email address that's provided to me by that broker. And then I go to one, two, however many brokers down the line, and I never change my email with the commission. And so my renewal notices, things like that, aren't getting to me. As y'all receive these emails, do you check them against license numbers, and does it automatically update their communication?
It does not automatically update the communication, but one of our core things that we do on every call is verify the contact information. So as they come in, we do verify they have the correct telephone number, they have the correct email address and everything on file with us when they call. But if they just send us an email, we respond to the email that it was sent from.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
It worked for me. Yeah, it worked. I sent an email, got a response back within the same day.
Great.
I was impressed.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you. Next up, Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Examination Services. Good morning.
Good morning again, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams, for the record. As a refresher, the role of the Education Division is to safeguard consumers of real estate services in Texas by ensuring accurate and relevant course content is provided in qualifying and continuing education courses, ensuring course design and delivery supports adult and active learning, thus providing the best opportunity for subject matter mastery, and regularly reviewing, as Carrie Dahl mentioned earlier, the performance of the licensing examination, test items, working with our exam vendor and subject matter experts to develop new test items, and case studies. Before I get to our reports, I wanted to share a couple of updates with you all. The instructor training sessions for the new broker responsibility course, the materials of which were approved by you in August. These trainings are underway and going strong. In fact, we've seen about a 15% increase in attendance and registration over the last broker responsibility instructor training in 2022. So far, we've been to Fort Worth and to Dallas. Later this week, we'll be hosting a training at the Austin Board of Realtors. 2 more trainings are currently scheduled for San Antonio and Houston. And afterward, we'll gauge the needs to determine if we want to do another on-site or remote training. This training now includes an overview of adult learning principles and applications, along with a deep dive into the activities and learning objectives. Summer Mandel will talk more about this later in her report, but I'm excited to say that we have received overwhelmingly positive feedback from the instructors to date. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the licensing exams. In FY 2024, Pearson VUE administered 34,921 sales agents exams, which is a 15% drop from last year. There were 2,423 broker exams administered, representing only a 4% drop. The first-time pass rates for sales agents and exams was 56%. However, the overall pass rate was 79%. The first-time pass rate for brokers was 58%, while the overall pass rate was 82%. The first-time pass rates for this fiscal year are consistent with the first-time pass rates for FY 2023. There are a lot of things that can impact the first-time pass rates. People have test anxiety. Sometimes as soon as they get out of their courses, they want to just jump in and test the waters, find out what's on the exam or what the experience is like. So maybe they're not quite ready. But the overall pass rate is more impactful. And at 79 and 82%, these are really strong numbers. With that, I'll move on to the education reports, which begin on page 24 of your materials. We ended our fiscal year strong with yet another increase in CE providers and CE courses approved, as you can see on the 2 graphs on the right-hand side of the page. Looking back 5 years, we've seen a 57% increase in CE providers. Similarly, we've seen a 35% increase in CE course applications approved. This is reflected in the data represented in FY 2020 and FY 2024 on those charts. You'll notice the numbers don't look as strong in qualifying education provider and course charts that are on the left-hand side of the page, but QE providers and courses are approved on a 4-year basis. So the providers and the courses they submitted in FY 2020 were resubmitted in FY 2024, and you'll see some consistency in those numbers there. The information presented on page 25 indicates that we approved about 3% more applications overall in FY 2024 over FY 2023. However, the overall increase over the last 5 fiscal years is actually 35%. And if you move to page 27 of your materials, we shift into the new fiscal year with the qualifying provider and course data for September. We expect to start seeing a spike in qualifying course applications as we have recently adopted changes to some of the pre-licensing courses, and those changes have become effective. So our providers can start submitting those new course applications. We continue to cross-train staff and are ready to manage those processes as they come through. The next page is similar information for continuing education providers and courses approved in September. And on the next page, you'll find a 13-month comparison of all applications approved by type. You'll note that September of last year and September of this year are pretty consistent. Next is an updated 5 fiscal year look back, dropping 2020 and adding FY 2025. The next page represents an updated 5 fiscal year look back for all applications approved. And the last page of the education report is a 13-month look back at our phone and email volume received directly within the division. These calls and emails are mostly from education providers looking for details on how to submit applications or checking on the status of a previously submitted application. And this concludes my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? On the 56% pass rate, that's on the first time, and the overall at 79%.
Correct.
Is that prior to the 3, or is that just, they pass it sometime?
Pass at some point.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up will be Denise Sample, Director of Licensing. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. So I'd like to start with just a brief introduction about the licensing division. I'm Denise Sample, the Director of Licensing, for the record. And our role is to safeguard the public interest, protect consumers of real estate services by ensuring that license holders meet the minimum education, experience, and exam requirements before a license or registration is issued. And this includes sales agents, brokers, both individual and business entities, inspectors, and easement or right-of-way registrants. It also includes the new registered business entities that are exempt from having to get a broker license. So the licensing reports begin on page 33 of your materials, and they start with a year-over-year comparison going back 5 full fiscal years, so from fiscal year 2020 through fiscal year 2024, which ended in August. The first report shows a fiscal year-end total of applications received across all license types. We ended fiscal year 2024 with 35,731 applications, and this represents about an 8% drop over the previous fiscal year. And you'll see that on the dotted line. And so the dotted line does seem very dramatic, so I'd like to point out the number there in orange reflects the actual percentage in the number of applications received year over year. The next report is a 5 fiscal year comparison of total license holder counts. And we ended fiscal year 2024 with 239,998 total license holders and registrants. And this represents less than 1% of growth over the previous fiscal year. And this data supports our expectation that the license holder counts are stabilizing. The next report is a graphical presentation of those license holder counts broken out by license type. The next report is a long-term fiscal year comparison of license holder counts. This is 20 fiscal years represented on this page. And once again, we ended fiscal year 2024 with a new peak. Since I've been creating this report, just each new column is the one that I color-coded in green as the new peak. The next report is the last of the year-over-year comparisons, and this shows the long-term renewal counts and rates, along with variances between each year, as well as even and odd year comparisons. Just as a reminder, all licenses renew on a 2-year cycle. So that's why we kind of do the comparisons 2 different ways here. Are there any questions about the year-over-year comparisons? No? All right, so starting on page 40 of your materials is the regular monthly staff reports with data through the first month of fiscal year 2025, so through the end of September of 2024. And the first report shows applications received by application type for September 2024, the comparison to the same period, September of 2024, which represents fiscal year 2025. And so it's September to September, last year and this year. The next page is license holder counts. This is a 13-month comparison. Oh, I apologize. This next one is a carryover of application types with easement and right-of-way registrants and our new business entity registrations. Sorry to trip you up, Amber. So you'll see as the business entities they only came to be in January of this year, so we don't have year-over-year data yet. We'll fill that in as we get there. So now the next page does show license holder counts. And we see over, am I on the right? I apologize, I lost my page here. These are the renewal rates broken down by license type. Did you skip over? Was this the second report? I apologize. All right. Apologies, we're on the renewal rates, and these are broken down by license type. So we do focus on the raw numbers, which you'll see compared at the top of each column graph, and then the renewal rate is in bold, and those are the numbers that we're seeing a slight increase in for brokers, in particular individual brokers, and with sales agents as compared to the same time frame 2 years prior. The next page is the one I guess I was really eager to show you guys, the total license holder counts and registrants. And you'll see we did end September. This is a 13-month comparison with a less than 0.3% dip in total license holder counts over the previous month. So this represents 224 fewer license holders. And then the last report, this is the license holder count broken down by license type. And then that last report is the application processing times. And this is a 13-month comparison as well. As a reminder, we have a goal of 14 calendar days where we want licensing, we want our team to provide a response and process an application. So this takes all the different times we interact with an applicant, asking for additional education or experience requirements, and excludes any time that it takes that applicant to pass the exam or clear the criminal history background check. And you'll see we're well within that metric. I do want to also point out that there's not a report in your materials that represents this data year-over-year comparison in a year-over-year comparison format. This data is relatively new. We only started being able to extract and report on this information in December of 2019. So I expect to include that next year, but I was able to look at the numbers going back to fiscal year 2020, and we've seen significant improvement, in particular with the sales agent application processing time and across the inspector applications. So in fiscal year 2020, just to give you this verbally, we were processing sales agent applications at about 11 days, and we ended fiscal year 2024 at 3.8 days. And for inspectors, we were anywhere between 10 and 17 days for processing time in fiscal year 2020. We ended fiscal year 2024 processing all of those at just under 6 days. So we're real proud of that. And that concludes my report. Are there any other questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you. Great numbers. All right. Next up, Michael Malloy, Director of Enforcement. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement. Before I get into my reports, just talk about the Enforcement Division. We investigate and enforce the consumer-related complaints that are filed against all of our license holders. Additionally, the division reviews new applicants and current license holders that have background history issues. Our division itself is composed of 37 individuals that, they're attorneys, legal assistants, and we're all dedicated to our consumer protection mission. Moving on to my fiscal year 2024 wrap-up, starting with page 47. This year, the division opened 5,999 cases, but we ended up closing 6,169 cases, reflecting a 3% difference in open versus closed. Our efforts towards efficient and timely turnaround of cases has further resulted in a 23% reduction in overall caseloads. And I'm pleased to announce that our streamlining and efficiency processes for our overall case aging initiatives has brought us to a new point where once complaints get past once the investigation is submitted, they're being directly given to the hands of our staff attorneys, and they're looking at them right then and there. So we've gotten to a point of a fully streamlined complaint process, thanks to the initiatives that we've been working over the past 2 years. Looking at the 5-year comparison on page 48, I do want to highlight that overall case openings for that broker and sales agent category has increased 22% since 2020, while other openings in other categories have either decreased or basically remained steady over the past 5-year period. Additionally, for the past 5 years, the division has met its minimum goal of closing more cases than it has opened. Moving on to the case aging closing annual report on page 49, you'll see that cases between 0 to 6 months represent 97% of our cases. That's the highest percentage in the past decade. Overall, the complaint resolution time for fiscal year 24 was 92 days. And that's a 60-day improvement from fiscal year 2023. So this concludes my annual review. Are there any questions before I move on to my monthly report? Okay. So my monthly overview, the next slide, shows that we had kicked off the year with a busy month, and we closed 7.5% more cases than we opened, showing a good, strong start to the year. And additionally, on the next page, page 52, 95% of our cases are currently at 6 months or older, with the remaining cases in those respective timeframes at near historical lows. Finally, turning to the case subject matter category, generally there's been no significant changes or new trends since I last reported on this report, where the top 3 categories are sales, other, licensure issues, and breach of fiduciary duty. This concludes my reports.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Tom Watson, Director of IT. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Tom Watson, Director of Information Technology. The Information Technology team is responsible for data and technology security throughout the agency. We are responsible for hardware, software deployments, support, management of those infrastructure items, all in support of division initiatives. On page 56, Over the last couple of conversations we've had, I've talked about consistency in the online numbers, both the online numbers of initial applications and renewals. So how many people go online, use those services to submit those transactions. On page 56, we see a year-over-year presentation of exactly those numbers, and it shows how consistent it has been over the last 5 years. Very predictable, very consistent. The one outlier in that was back in 2020 for initial applications, and my belief is that's related to the COVID period. So that happens to be a very positive outlier, but nevertheless an outlier. On page 58, we begin the presentation of September and the new fiscal year. Again, supporting the continued consistency for online transactions, online utilization of renewals and initial applications. For renewals, we're consistently in the 98% utilization area, while on the initial applications, we're in the 80% area for utilization. And then finally, on page 59 is a month-to-month comparison, looking back 13 months, again representing predictable outcomes, predictable numbers. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much. Next up, Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer. I'll be presenting the staff reports for the Financial Services Division for fiscal year 2024 closeout report, as well as our September 2024 monthly report. Starting on page 60, that will begin the 2024 closeout report. This review is structured to give you an update for quarter 4 of fiscal year 24, as well as a complete look back for all of the revenue and expenditures. On page 61 is our quarterly revenue analysis. We projected to collect $3.6 million for the quarter, but we actually collected $3.3 million. Our overall revenue collection was $14.1 million, and that was $312,000 less than what we originally projected. On page 62, it breaks down the difference and the variance of each revenue fee category, so you can see how we performed in each. The data does show a slowdown in exam revenue fee, which can potentially suggest that we're seeing a slight decrease in the amount of people who are actually interested in pursuing their license and getting into the market at this time. On page 63 is the quarterly expenditure analysis. We projected to expend $4.7 million in quarter 4, and we had expenditures of $4.6 million. Overall, for the year, we budgeted expenditures at $18.4 million, and actual expenditures were $18 million. On page 64, again, it breaks down the difference in the variance for each category, so you can see how we performed in each. Our expenditures exceeded our original budget in a few categories, and those were salary and wages by 1%, or $69,000, and that was due to annual leave that was paid out to 2 retirees in August. That was more than what we originally projected. Travel exceeded by $11,000, rent of equipment by $9,000. Our statewide cost allocation plan, it increased by $52,000. And as you know, that amount fluctuates each year. And we're basically told by the Comptroller's Office how much our portion is for that amount. And so we don't really have much say-so on that. And lastly, our capital expenditures category, that increased by $13,000. Overall, our largest cost drivers are personnel-related costs, which equate to 81% of our expenditures. On page 65 is an overview of the ramp-related expenditures. This captures all expenditures for this project and not just expenditures recognized in FY24. The total project budget is $5.5 million. Actual expenditures since FY21 are $1,405,054.80, with $308,000 being expended in FY24. On page 66 It shows the monthly graphical representation of a year-over-year comparison of the revenue and expenditures from FY24 versus FY23. On page 67 are snippets from our revenue dashboard. Each tile shows you the actual amount collected, what we budgeted for FY24, what the FY23 actual collection was, and the year-over-year percentage of change. On page 68, excuse me, you'll find snippets from our expenditure dashboard. Again, you're going to see the actual expenditures for 24, the budgeted expenditures for 24, what the FY23 actual expenditures were for that particular category, and the year-over-year percentage of change. On page 69, you'll see our 5-year trend data. This provides you actual revenue and expenditures from FY 2020 through 2024, the approved budget for FY 25, and the proposed budgets for 26 and 27. And as you can see, by design, our expenditures have grown over the years as we were directed to spend down the fund balance, and we've done just that. We are now at a point where, in order to sustain the level of service that we've been able to provide, we will need to start exploring a fee increase, which we're in the process of doing.
Renata?
Yes.
Has this been amended for the changes that we talked about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Lastly, we go into our fiscal year-end holdings report, which is basically our ending balance in each portfolio, which is comprised of cash and U.S. Treasury notes. In account 3055, our account balance was $17.2 million. We had $8.9 in operating reserves, which left $8.3 million as the ending balance on the report. On page 71, in account 3058, which is our real estate recovery account, we had $4 million as our account balance, $483,000 reserved for potential payments within the next 90 days, and that left $3.5 million as the ending account balance. On page 72, it shows payment history of the real estate recovery account. Here you can see data such as the amount of various claim payments, repayments received, admin penalties received, and the number of claims we paid each year. And finally, on page 73 is account 3059, which is our real estate inspector recovery fund. Our account ending balance was $468,118.37. There are no potential payments within the next 90 days. And there's also a chart on the right that shows payment history. As you can see, our last payment out of this fund was in fiscal year 2017. That concludes the FY24 closeout report, and I will now move on to the FY25 September report.
Nada?
Yes, ma'am.
I know one of our largest expenses is obviously the ramp project. What did you say the other largest percentage of expenses is?
Personnel related at 81%.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now for our FY25 quarter 1 September monthly report. That begins on page 75. This is our quarterly budget analysis, and this is data through September 30th. We collected a little over $1 million, which is 7.2% of our targeted revenue collection, and so we're slightly below that target of 8.3% for the month. On page 76 is the quarterly expense analysis. Again, this data is through September 30th. We had expenditures of $1.8 million, which is 8.7% of the projected target, so we're above our target of 8.3. So here, as you can see, our expenditures were more than our revenue for the month of September. On page 77 is an operating activity comparison for the month of September. Again, in regards to our revenue, looking at last year and this year, our revenue collection was lower this year as compared to FY24. We collected $166,000 less in the month of September. Conversely, we also spent more in September than we did the previous year, and that's primarily due to reaching additional milestones for the ramp project and paying those invoices that were presented. Next are our holdings reports for the TREC operating account 3055. We had one U.S. Treasury note that matured, and those funds were reinvested. The total portfolio balance was approximately $15 million, with $5.1 million set aside for operational reserves. That leaves us with an ending balance of $10.7 million unreserved and available for operations. On page 79, the real estate recovery account 3058. It too had one U.S. Treasury note that matured, and those funds were reinvested. The total portfolio balance was $4 million. We have $483,394.07 reserved for potential payments within the next 90 days. That leaves roughly $3.5 million as the ending account balance, and this fund is fully capable of meeting all of its known obligations. And lastly is the real estate inspector recovery account 3059. It had an ending balance of $470,038.36, and there are no pending payments, and there are no treasury notes that matured during this reporting period. This concludes the Financial Services Division report. Are there any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you for working so closely with not only staff, but also the commissioner, primarily Commissioner.
Of course. Yes, sir.
All right, up next, Summer Mandel, Government Strategic Communications Director. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, y'all. So as Chair Kesner said, I'm Summer Mandel, Government and Strategic Communications Director, and y'all have been hearing me say that for a while, and maybe now the government will make a little bit more sense. So I have been working with Tony since I got here, and so he's helped me learn how to deal with legislative offices and how the session goes and all of that. So I'm excited to take on more of that moving forward. So for purposes of today, though, I'm wearing the communications hat right now. Later will be legislative. So my report is a little bit different from others because we don't really have the same kind of data that other divisions have on number of license holders or revenue or that kind of stuff. So what I pulled for you today here is just some data on our social media following. So in our department, I work alongside communications specialist Sierra Pizarro, and our mission is to create clear, timely, relevant information on behalf of the agency for our license holders and prospective license holders and the public in general. So with that, I'll give you an update on some of those projects, but I'll first start with the social media stuff. So overall, you can see that our followers on Facebook and Instagram are primarily in Houston and San Antonio. They are women, and they're between ages 35 and 44. And in LinkedIn, the followers are from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. We've got 28% of our audience from there, and 23% from Houston, and 11% from Austin. So this is just some demographic data that we receive from our primary platforms, which are Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. One notable trend for you on Instagram is the number of followers. We've nearly doubled that since this time last year. So I've also included subscriber counts for our newsletters, TREC Advisor, Education Connection, and Inspector Insight. And typically I include open rates on those newsletters, but we intentionally did not send any newsletters between our last meeting in August and October 20th when I pulled this data. So the agency was moving from one email marketing platform to another. So we moved from GovDelivery to Constant Contact. And during this period, we've been working to transition from one product to another, trying to capture all the data as well as we can. I'm sure there will be some kinks to work out, but I do want to thank Jason Romero in our IT department for helping out with that, and also Kimberly McAnally, a purchaser in the finance department. She was a great help in getting this new vendor set up for us. So although it's not reflected in this report, Education Connection was the first e-newsletter that we sent using Constant Contact. That went out on October 29th. And as of this morning, it had a 65% open rate and a 5% click-through rate. Just as a reminder, for Education Connection that I reported on in August, the open rate for that was 38% and the click-through rate was 2%. So I'm hopeful that this is good news, that we've got a product that's going to be exciting and folks are going to be interested in it. So So moving on to the second page of my report, you'll see some spreads from the new broker responsibility course. As Director Wheeler mentioned in her update, instructor trainings have started and they're going well. Sierra and I have been more involved in course content development, along with General Counsel Vanessa Burgess, Director Wheeler, and curriculum developer Jennifer Gruby. So one of the priorities for this course, in addition to creating an updated look and feel, was including information that is timely and relevant to the industry, as well as information that's desired by the commission. So I highlighted some of those things here. So there's information about the new broker succession rule that y'all adopted in August, as well as like some practical takeaways for brokers who want to get this set up for their own brokerage. There's also a lot about advertising in there, as that was another initiative of the commission to do more communications on that. So there's the basics of advertising, but we also added something new, which is advertising as it relates to social media in today's practice. So like reels, things like that, like house tours, other kinds of stuff. We also added some considerations about using artificial intelligence in your brokerage, and that's a pretty new burgeoning topic. This is kind of a 101 level, and we are likely to expand on that in legal update and future iterations of this course. So for the primary course activity, we created fictional characters for students to use to build their own brokerage using the information they learned in the first chapter about the people who can compose a brokerage. So broker associates, delegated supervisors, sales agents, team leads, and so forth. And that's kind of a fun piece. Some of those characters run through the book. Since an important element of running a brokerage and following TREC rules is maintaining written policies and procedures, we have elements throughout the book where people can jot down notes about things that they might want to add or update in their policies and procedures for their brokerage. And that could be even if you're a sales agent taking this class, you can always learn something that you want to pass along. We also have a page at the end. It's kind of hard to see, but the very last page of the course book is a worksheet where students can kind of throw all those notes they took together in one place, and that is a literal takeaway from the course. Hopefully there are other takeaways, but at least you got this worksheet at the end. It's kind of how I look at it. So we're really excited about the feedback that we've been getting about the course through instructor training, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the students receive it next year. So finally, there's one more big project that I want to share with y'all. We are working on updating TREC.texas.gov and TALCB.texas.gov. That started with a request for offers. That closed on October 25th, and now we're in the evaluation stage. And unfortunately, due to procurement law, I can't really tell you anything else about what's going on at this stage, but I can assure you that there will be opportunities for stakeholders to provide feedback, and that includes commissioners and, of course, our board members. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Congrats on the constant contact. That's doubled the open and click rate.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
So more to come.
Very good. Okay, it is 10:53. We're going to take a break, 5 minutes. We'll shoot for 5, and so we're on break. We'll call the meeting back in order at 11:04 a.m. We'll go to agenda item number 12. Public comment. We do not have any in-person public comment. I do want to reference page 84 of your material. We got a public comment concerning a trust account and escrow funds, and y'all, all the comments we get, whether they're public or whether they're in writing, we certainly pay attention to them, and we cycle those to the divisions and the departments that need this information. And I will tell you, the new broker responsibility course is spending some time on trust accounts and escrow accounts and stuff like that. And that is one of the advantages of being a real estate agent in Texas, is if you are damaged, we do have the recovery fund, okay? And so please read that. We also had public comment from Adrian Pena concerning several different things. Number one, some of the things that related to the NAR settlement that directly does not impact TREC, but it impacts the license holders in the state of Texas. I mean, the ballpark number is 85% of all active licensees are members of the Texas Realtors. So even though it might not be within our purview, when you start talking about representation and informational brokerage services and something, it is something we definitely need to pay attention to, and it is something we are working with Texas Realtors and eventually the legislature to help, offset some of the changes in our industry. And we appreciate these comments because this tells us what is happening with our almost 240,000 licensees that are out there in the industry. And then the last one was a broker had been licensed over 40 years, talking about, again, some results of the settlement and publishing a compensation and cooperation. I just want you to know that whether or not you appear here and make a comment or you send it in, not only are the commissioners paying attention, but the directors and staff are paying attention. And when we have our conversations about what we need to do, either regulatory or legislatively, it helps us determine some type of pathway. Now, legislatively, we cannot lobby. We are called on to give testimony, to witness. We cannot lobby, but this certainly gives us information when we give our testimony to the various committees or whatever that we might be asked for. So even though you're not here in person, we appreciate your comments, and they will certainly be sent to the right person to get things answered. Okay, we are actually running a little bit ahead of schedule, so I'm going to go from agenda item number 12 to agenda item number 15, rules for possible adoption, and we will come back to the SOA cases, agenda item 13, and I'll have Deputy General Counsel Abby Lee talk about the rules for a possible adoption. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Agenda item 15 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments and new rule to 22 TAC Chapter 537. In the interest of time, the specific sections up for adoption are listed in the agenda and included in your materials. So as you heard, the Broker Lawyer Committee met on October 11th, and they reviewed and discussed 341 comments, which in my time, I think that's the most I'm aware that the committee has ever received. They also received, included in that amount was a comment from Texas Realtors. A summary of the proposed changes that are now up for adoption are in your materials, as well as all of the comments that we received. So I'm not going to go through every single change and every single comment, but I'm going to highlight a few of those changes and those comments. So the first change I'm going to highlight is in paragraph 6C1. To be consistent, as if you remember, this proposed change was to be consistent with a recently updated TDI, Texas Department of Insurance, procedural rule. So paragraph 6C1 was amended to include an option of providing the T47.1 declaration, which does not need to be notarized, in lieu of the T47 affidavit when the seller furnishes the buyer an existing survey. In lieu of providing a no survey required option, paragraph 6C2 was amended to read that the buyer may, instead of shall, obtain a new survey. And it added that if a buyer ultimately fails to obtain the survey, the buyer does not have the right to terminate the contract under paragraph 2B of the third-party financing addendum because the survey was not obtained. Regarding this proposed change, we received 20 comments related to this specifically. With several of those commenters asking clarifying questions really about the difference between the affidavit, the existing affidavit, and the new T47.1 declaration. The committee reviewed those comments and declined to make changes at this time, noting in particular that further education on the new T47.1 will help alleviate confusion. Paragraphs 6E4, 7, and 9. So that was a change where the references were removed to separately related addendum. And one commenter requested that those deleted sentences be added back. The committee discussed this and ultimately agreed, deciding to retain the previously struck last sentences to better inform the party. So that, as you heard earlier, is one difference between the proposed version and what's before you today. Next up is paragraph 6E11. So the proposed change was that was related to mold remediation and a certificate of mold remediation. But because Texas law requires a seller to provide a buyer a copy of any mold remediation certificate issued during the 5 years preceding the sale of the property, the new 6E11 paragraph was added to provide information regarding this requirement, except in the unimproved property contract. 4 comments were received, and these were mostly noting concerns with the requirements of the statute, not necessarily the language in the contract, but the requirements in the underlying statute. So because this is a statutory requirement, the committee declined to make changes at this time, and again noted that it was mirroring the statutory requirements. Next up, paragraph 8B, the proposed change to paragraph 8B was to add the phrase, broker fees are not set by law and are negotiable, with several commenters requesting that that language be removed because of concerns about confusion and redundancy. After consideration of the comments and discussion, the committee did decide to remove that proposed language, particularly in light of a proposed change you're going to see later regarding the IBS. Moving along, paragraph 12. So as a reminder, in light of the recent discussions regarding broker compensation, paragraph 12A1A and 12A2 added that each party pays the brokerage fees they each have agreed to pay. Paragraph 12A1B would allow for a specific seller contribution to the buyer's brokerage fees. And a new paragraph 12A1C was added to separately address other seller contributions. That was previously in 12A1B. And the prior language that specified the order in which any contribution was to be paid, as well as a limitation on the type of fee that could be paid, was removed. The majority of the comments, so 258 in total, were regarding the proposed changes to paragraph 12. With 170, actually, of those comments, most with an identical comment, requesting that compensation be addressed in a manner similar to that of the Farm and Ranch contract or the Texas Realtors commercial contract. The committee reviewed, as they do, every single comment and had extensive discussions on these changes. The committee declined to make changes at this time, but noted, as several have mentioned already, that discussions on this issue will continue, particularly as the industry evolves in this area. The committee did make a non-substantive formatting change to paragraph 12B, 1A through C. So that's another non-substantive difference between the proposed and the adopted version. The broker information page, so that compensation disclosure on the broker information section of the contracts, all except the Farm and Ranch, was modified to remove the parenthetical referencing the MLS and to add checkboxes to allow for the fee to be reflected either as a percentage or a dollar amount. 29 comments were received, with 17 comments wanting the disclosure to be removed altogether, while 6 wanted the disclosure to be replaced with the compensation language found in the Farm and Ranch contract. Texas Realtors requested a change that would reflect the possibility of the seller paying the other broker directly. The committee discussed and elected to not make changes at this time, but will consider changes, including the possible removal of the disclosure at a subsequent meeting. Switching gears now to the addendum for backup contract, the committee discussed the comments received and declined to make changes, but did make a small change in paragraph J, capitalizing the term effective date, which is a defined term. Additionally, there were comments received on the proposed new form, the addendum for Section 1031 exchange, as well as the remaining existing forms, including the amendment, the condominium resale certificate, and the third-party financing addendum. As always, the committee discussed these comments, but ultimately declined to make changes. Therefore, The Broker Lawyer Committee recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption the amendments and new rule to 22 TAC Chapter 537 as presented, along with the forms adopted by reference to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption. And in terms of timing, the condominium resale certificate form is a voluntary use form, and so it may be used once posted on the agency's website, assuming there's adoption today. But all the remaining contract forms adopted by reference would be available for voluntary use until January 3rd, 2025, when their use becomes mandatory. And that's the Broker Lawyer Committee recommendation.
Woodruff.
I'd like to move that we adopt the changes proposed on 537.
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner Woodruff, second by Commissioner Hartgraves. Any discussion? Commissioner Lerner.
I just had a quick question. We don't have a settlement yet. There's supposed to be maybe something this month. I know there's tons of objections that have been entered regarding this settlement. And some of these forms don't even pertain to the NAR settlement. Why are we pushing this when we can wait to the next meeting so we don't have to keep changing?
If we do wait for the settlement, again, the settlement's outside our purview, but if we wait for the settlement and then we come back in February and we propose, we can't adopt until May, and then we can't implement until September. So we're like 12 months out. That's why I think Broker Lawyer is very specifically saying this is where we're at now to communicate compensation, transparency, because not all of our licensees have access to forms 2402, 2406 that do compensation and addendum between the brokers, and this gives them the vehicle to settle compensation so all parties are aware of who's paying what. And I think even they recognize it's not the perfect fix, but it gives the majority of licensees that aren't members of an association that have those forms the ability to provide transparency in the transaction. And I think that's why they jumped now to get these out. And that's, you probably have a better answer than that.
No, that's exactly right. And this is something that they did discuss, the timing of the settlement. And I think, as you stated, this is a work in progress, that there will likely be changes continuing, but that they felt that these were important to get out now, just to provide some, I think, flexibility and clarity for the buyer and the seller in light of some of these changes that have already happened.
We had communication with the broker that is not a member, and, they're, as a commissioner, I hate to say it, but they're really looking at paragraph 12, the paragraph 11, special provisions to identify what's in 12. And so I think this is a good first step. I agree, it's not over, but I don't see us waiting until February and reintroducing the rating, because we're a state agency and we move slowly, and that's not always a good thing, but it might be a good thing too, not to overreact. And so, yeah.
So legally, where are we leaving ourselves? I know the DOJ is coming after Texas Realtors. So us changing these forms, are they going to come after us too?
I don't know that we have those concerns, but I think that regardless of the changes from the NAR settlement, these, I think, again, are supposed to reflect the kind of the changes that are already happening industry-wide, and it's between the buyer and the seller, really reflecting changes that could be made or addressed in the settlement paragraph. I'm not sure that entirely answers your question, but I'm not sure that we share those concerns at this time.
Great discussion. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you and Broker Lawyer for outstanding work to get these done. Okay. I'm going to move one more agenda item. We're going to move to agenda item 23 before we go back to agenda item 13. And that is discussion, possible action to nominate candidates for offices of Vice Chair and Secretary of the Commission in February of 24. This is on our agenda by rule, that in February, y'all will elect a new vice chair and secretary. So if you have an interest, you can certainly nominate now or nominate then. But with the walking quorum, unlike what's going on today in our world, there can be no campaigning, okay? Because we do have a walking quorum. But we will select a new vice chair and secretary at the February meeting, okay? So if you have an interest, you know, we'll certainly discuss it. And normally we do that in February, but it's on our agenda. So are we good? Good. Okay. That's all we need is more campaign ads. Okay. Let's go to agenda item number 13. And this will be Director Mike Malloy going over 4 cases involving SOA decisions. And the first thing I will announce is agenda item 13A is consideration and possible action regarding the proposal for the decision in the matter of SOA 32924111212, TREC versus Jared LaChance McLean. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the respondent? Okay, then we will begin with Mr. Malloy, Director of Enforcement.
Good morning again, Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement for the record. The proposal for decision concerns Mr. McLean's application for an inactive real estate sales agent license, which TREC recommended for denial. The denial is based on Mr. McLean's criminal history, including convictions for fraud, theft, forgery, tampering with government records, and multiple DWIs, as well as parole and community supervision violations. Mr. McLean's criminal history spans from 1998 to 2000, including 13 offenses, 8 of which were felonies, and he had violations of community supervision, at least on 3 instances. He submitted incomplete information regarding his offenses and omitted his 2020 DWI offense. The ALJ concluded that Mr. McLean had not met his burden to prove fitness for licensure, and the ALJ recommended denial of his application. Staff recommends adoption of the PFD and denial of Mr. McLean's application. The attorney that handled this matter is available for more detailed follow-up questions.
Any follow-up questions? Seeing none, we will now move to agenda item 13B. And let me... Agenda item 13B is a consideration of possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket 32924015564, real estate REC TREC versus Joseph Van Humphrey Bradley. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the respondent? Okay. Seeing none, we will begin with Mr. Malloy.
Okay, this proposal for decision addresses TREC's case to revoke Mr. Bradley's real estate sales agent license due to his criminal history, including 7 convictions for indecent exposure and a deferred adjudication for a felony of evading arrest. Bradley's indecent exposure convictions required him to register as a high-risk sex offender, and his deferred adjudication remains uncompleted, allowing the TREC to treat this as a conviction if they find that he poses an additional threat to public safety. So our key findings here are he had 7 convictions of indecent exposure, and they're classified as directly related to the responsibilities of a sales agent and due to public concerns, where we equated this to enter into people's homes and have other access to other private areas. I would say during the hearing, he downplayed the facts in the context of his offenses, of which we had evidence that was to the contrary. After reviewing the evidence, the ALJ found that Bradley had not demonstrated current fitness for licensure, and given the nature of his offenses and ongoing community supervision, the ALJ recommended revocation of Mr. Bradley's license. And staff recommends adoption of the PFD and the revocation of Mr. Bradley's license.
Any questions? All right, hearing none, we will move to agenda item 13C. Is consideration and possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329241135 REC TREC versus Daniel Alexander Topolsky. Is there anybody here to speak for the respondent? Seeing none, we will begin with, go ahead.
So this proposal decision addresses TREC's case to revoke Mr. Topolsky's real estate sales agent license due to his criminal conviction involving invasive visual recordings. In February of 2022, he used his cell phone to record individuals, including a minor, in a department store dressing room. He pled guilty in April 2023 and received a deferred adjudication for community supervision for 5 years. TREC finds the sexual offenses like invasive visual recording directly related to the real estate license due to its trustworthiness concerns and risk presented when the license holders access private homes. He submitted letters of recommendation and demonstrated compliance with his probation, but his offenses were deemed severe, recent, and not isolated based on his admissions that he had done this previously. Due to his basically incomplete or not full rehabilitation and potential for risk posed by granting access to private spaces, the ALJ recommended revocation of Mr. Topolsky's license, and staff recommends adoption of the PFD and revocation of his license as well.
Any questions? I've got one question, and I hope I don't have this one mixed up with another one, but there are letter of recommendations, but the letter of recommendations did not reference any of the offenses, and that was part of your presentation.
We do
just
bring
so
that up.
correct?
How Chapter 53 is worded is basically, they don't have to, but it actually gives an extra step to saying, I'm aware of this person's background, and still, because even though I am aware, I am good with, giving this recommendation. So we do point that out to LJ. They may balance it based upon their, their privy to do so. But yeah, we do take that into review and consideration when we review people's backgrounds.
Because that recommendation, like, they didn't know about the offense, so it was like.
Yeah, we've done it before in the past where we'll cross-examine people that are actually there to testify on behalf, and they've changed their opinions because they didn't know the full context of the person's background. So.
All right. Any other questions? We will go to agenda item number 13D. Agenda item 13D is consideration of possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket 32924-12947, REC TREC versus Christopher Cruz. Is there anybody here to speak for the respondent? Okay.
All right. So this case seeks to revoke Mr. Cruz's real estate sales agent license. In February 2021, he pled guilty to the felony offense of conspiracy to defraud the United States. Defraud the United States and to pay and receive healthcare kickbacks. The respondent was finally sentenced in 2023 and given 5 years of probation with no option for early termination and ordered to pay $76,000 in restitution. This fraud-based offense is directly related to brokerage activity. And evaluating the factors in Chapter 53, the administrative law judge noted that the offense, since it was fraud-based and occurred over several years, was sufficient enough that he did not meet the requirements to hold a real estate license and recommended revocation of the license. Therefore, staff recommends adoption of the proposal for decision and the revocation of Mr. Cruz's sales agent license.
Any questions? Commissioner Pena.
Mike, did I read in the PFD that he stated that he was not aware that that was happening and kind of blamed it on his business partner?
I might have to turn to the attorney that handled the matter. Like, she would be able to give a better detailed explanation. But if I recall, he did have some excuses, but.
He pled guilty, right?
He pled guilty, and that was part of, and I think it's important to note that there was no ability for him to earn his, in the probation early. And I think, well, Beverly can answer more, but, I mean, they wouldn't issue restitution if then there wasn't some sort of serious implications as well.
She was one of his partners, and he did not, as I recall, he did not understand the depth of what was going on. I think she was the more guilty party, but he knew something was going on. He just wasn't aware of the breadth of it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 11:30. I'm going to go to agenda item number 14. We will go into executive session to discuss pending litigation and obtain legal counsel on agenda items pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071. I expect we will be in executive approximately 1 hour. Hey, we will call the meeting back into session at 12:32 p.m. We will go back to agenda item number 13A. So a docket 32924112112 REC TREC versus Jared Chance McLean. Does anybody have a question for Director Malloy concerning 13A? Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Malloy? No questions. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt the PFD as written.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Harvey Lowe to accept the motion as written. Do we have a second?
Second.
I've got a second, Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussions or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. We will now go to 13B, SOA docket 329240156 REC TREC versus Joseph Van Murphy Bradley. Does anybody have any questions for Director Malloy? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to adopt the PFD as written.
Second.
Got a motion made by Commissioner Woodruff, second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Going to agenda item number 13C, SOA docket number 329241135 REC TREC versus Daniel Alexander Toplowski. Any questions for Director Malloy? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Move to accept PFD as written.
A motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Going back, agenda item 13D, SOA docket number 329241297 REC TREC versus Christopher Cruz. Any questions for Director Malloy? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to adopt the PDF as written.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Russell, second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Malloy. All right, we will, Commissioner Hargraves.
I'd just like to thank Mike and his staff for his hard work on these. I think it highlights the good work that they do at enforcement.
Thanks. Appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
I mean, anytime you go 4-0 with a SOA, that's good. So, great job. Okay, we're going to agenda item number 16, and that will be rules for possible proposal. And I believe Deputy General Counsel Abby Lee is going to be up here for a few minutes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So as mentioned, we're shifting gears now to rules for possible proposal. If you do vote to propose these today, they will go out for notice and comment, and then we will come back in February to vote to adopt. So first off is agenda item 16. And it's discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 531.20, information about brokerage services. The proposed amendments to 531.20 and the form adopted by reference, the information about brokerage services form, are made as a result of recent industry changes surrounding broker compensation to clarify to the consumer that any brokerage fees are not set by law and are negotiable. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 531.20 and the form adopted by reference as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Any questions?
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Motion by Commissioner Pena, second Commissioner Brown. Any further discussions or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 17.
Agenda item 17 is discussion and possible action to propose a new rule, 22 TAC 534.8, employee sick and family leave pools. The new rule is proposed to address the operation and procedures of both the employee sick and family leave pool required by sections 661.002 and 022 of the Texas Government Code. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 534.8 as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I got a motion by Commissioner Brown,
Second.
second Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 18.
Agenda item 18 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535 as follows. 535.65, responsibilities and operations of providers of qualifying courses. 535.70, definitions, and 535.72, approval of non-elective continuing education courses. You heard a little bit about this from the ESAC chair earlier. So the proposed amendment to 535.65 G1B1 replaces the phrase check the photo identification with verify the identification of each student to 1, broaden the language and recognition of technology developments that may allow for this required verification in different ways, 2, to help alleviate concerns about the security of a student's personal data while taking a course, and then 3, to make consistent with language elsewhere in the rule. The remainder of the amendments to that section, 535.65, remove the requirement to have a qualifying course examination proctored and to have a proctor in situations where a course is delivered through use of technology and there are more than 20 students at a remote site. The proctoring requirements were recommended to be removed out of concerns, as you heard earlier, that the exam requirement was unnecessary because of the licensing examination itself is proctored, and then 2, that the requirements generally were overly burdensome. The term classroom delivery is added to 535.65 G1C to specify that the obligation applies to that type of course, and the language in 535.65 H5 is reworded for consistency with similar language found in 535.72. Moving on to 535.70, that removes the definition of proctor. The proposed amendments to 72G3B remove the proctoring requirement for inspector non-elective continuing education course requirements for distance education delivery and make clarifying changes for rule consistency. Again, both changes were recommended out of concerns that the exam proctoring requirement was unnecessary and the requirements generally are overly burdensome. Additionally, these proposed changes were recommended by both ESAC and the Inspector Committee. Therefore, the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535.65, 535.70, and 535.72 as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Move to staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Pena.
Second.
Second Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 19.
Agenda item 19 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535 as follows. 535.191, Schedule of Administrative Penalties, and 535.219, Schedule of Administrative Penalties. So the amendments to these two sections are proposed to, one, clarify that a person may only pay an administrative penalty in an authorized manner, and two, add that if an online payment is authorized, such a payment may be subject to fees set by the Department of Information Resources that are in addition to the administrative penalty assessed by the Commission. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535.191 and 535.219 as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Pena, second by motion made by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion, any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 20.
Last but not least, agenda item 20 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 537.45, Standard Contract Form TREC number 38-7, Notice of Buyer's Termination of Contract. You heard a little bit about this change earlier today. So the Broker Lawyer Committee recommended revisions to paragraph 2 of the notice to ensure that the buyer has delivered the lender's written statement to the seller in accordance with the changes that you just voted in the third-party financing addendum in paragraph 2A buyer approval. So it aligns those. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 537.45 and the form adopted for reference as as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Got a motion by Commissioner Russell.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? I've got one question. We approved the third party. We adopted it.
Mm-hmm.
The termination still refers to that paragraph. This is just clarifying they still need to document that because the addendum has been approved, correct?
Exactly. This
Okay.
is a clarifying change. It's similar to another sentence. I think it's paragraph 3 of the notice that has that same sentence, so just making it the same.
Very good. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we will move to agenda item number 24 regarding discussion of and possible action regarding any future agenda items. Anything you want on the agenda in the future? All right, agenda 25, future meetings. The next meeting is February 10th in Austin, followed up by a workshop on February 11th if needed. I think all of you have that in your calendar. Okay. Being no further business, I will adjourn this meeting at 12:44 p.m. We will go into workshop 1 o'clock upstairs.